As some of my longtime viewers may know, I have a bit of a problem with the Final Fantasy series. I think it's lost its way, and it's just not as fun as it used to be. I think the problem with the Final Fantasy series is their incessant need to mess with things that don't need to be messed with. For example, in Final Fantasy X, when you had to use a sphere grid in order to upgrade your character's attributes. Or in Final Fantasy XII, where you had to get a license in order to use a piece of equipment or a weapon. How stupid is that? Final Fantasy seems to have forgotten that it's the story that they should focus on, not just some lame gimmick. If you look at games like Persona or Lunar, they both have great battle systems and fantastic stories. That's why they're great games. They don't overcomplicate the battles and keep it fun to play. Final Fantasy needs to learn from their examples on how to make a good role-playing game. So is this new retro 16-bit graphical add-on to the Final Fantasy IV story change the downward fall of the fun of the Final Fantasy series? Kinda. I had more fun playing this game than the last 4 Final Fantasy games. Maybe it was the simplistic graphics, or it was the fact that it was back to a world of simpler times, and not futuristic towns and locations. This is the Final Fantasy that I remember and enjoyed as a kid. Now it's been about 15 years since I last played Final Fantasy II, which was the name they gave it when they brought it to America. I vaguely remember the story, but some of the characters that I got to play in this game made me recall some of the memories of that previous game. But I do wish the game had given us a rundown on the people that we're playing. Unfortunately, they don't. They just assume that you already know who they are. Since this is a role-playing game and the story is the most important part of the game, I'm only going to touch on it lightly, so I'm not going to spoil anything for you. A few years after the events in Final Fantasy IV, the world is at peace, but soon the second moon returned, and the monsters have gone crazy again. And it's your job to bring peace to the world again. The game unfolds through different chapters of a different character's life. It'll switch between them and you'll get different characters to play with different storylines, so the gameplay is always fresh. The graphics look just like they did when the game first originally came out in 1991. It won't be anything awe-inspiring other than the impressive ways they could maximize the way the 16-bit graphics could be presented. The battle system is where you're going to be spending a great deal of time. The game uses an active time battle system as opposed to a turn-based system. That just means that you'll have to wait till your bar fills up till it's your turn. You then choose what you want to do and then it moves on to your next character with a full bar or an enemy attacks. The major problem I had with the battle system, it was hard for you to tell who you're commanding. I wish they had given you a name by the battle menu so I wouldn't have to waste a second looking over at the formation to see who stepped forward. Every second counts in this game since there's no waiting around, and I can't tell you the amount of times I confused 2 of my characters and used the wrong one for healing. You can also combine characters together to do an attack, and that was really cool. It's called a band attack. You and 2 to 3 characters will band together for a devastating attack. You'll have to experiment with combining different attacks and magics with each other. There are over 70 different bands you could do in this game if you're a completist. Also, unfortunately in the grand Final Fantasy tradition, they had to make a gimmick in this game, just to make it more fun. I have to assume. This time they thought it'd be a great idea to use the moon's phases to make your physical or magical attacks more powerful or less powerful, depending on how the moon is looking. And it's not just you who's affected, the monsters are as well. So you'll have to watch the moon's phases and make sure you're going battling at the proper time. You can always advance the moon's phases by going into an inn or resting in a tent. But honestly, I think this whole gimmick is a stupid idea, like most of the ideas that the Final Fantasy creators do to change up the Final Fantasy experience. It's only an inconvenient pain to deal with. This game is very hard. Unlike other RPGs you might have played, every battle has the real potential for death, so you'll need to save as often as possible, and level grind to stay alive. Now the main game can be beaten in about 6 to 8 hours. There are also add-ons to the story that you could download if you pay for them. There are 8 more episodes to download to fully complete the game. As of right now, the episodes are not all out yet, but a good portion of them are. Final Fantasy The After Years is an interesting idea. Release a game that deals with what happened after the original adventure ended. One of the big problems I have with this game is the price. The game only really costs $8, but if you end up buying every episode, which you will, it's going to cost you a total of $37. So the question I have to ask is this title worth $37? And I come to the conclusion the answer is yes. This game is fantastic, and in the end it could take over 20 hours to finish. Plus you can always go back and find all the secret chests and locations that are just littered through the game. However, I do want to repeat, this is not an easy game. It's very hard. But if you're up for that kind of a challenge, then you should definitely buy it now.